for having us today. I'm Cindy Baldwin. I am the president of VDCO Tech, which is BIM, boots on the ground, and VDCO Data, which is brains in the cloud. And I also serve on the executive committee of Building Smart USA and chair the USA Airport Work Group. I have over 30 years of experience working in our industry, really just bridging the gap between real world practice and technology. Today, I'm proud to introduce my friend, my colleague, Scott Yates.
All right, thanks, Cindy. Super excited to be here, to be both with VDCO Data and Cindy, as well as with Building Smart and with all of you to present what hopefully you'll find to be very valuable material. A little bit of background on me. I've been doing asset management consulting for over 20 years. The last 5 or 6 years of that have been really focused on data interoperability across the asset lifecycle. That's how Cindy and my paths crossed, and that's what has us working together today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. So this is going to be a presentation largely about reframing how we look at AI and implementing AI across our organizations in the AEC and facilities management industries. Now, there are primarily three categories of people as it relates to AI generated content. The first are those who simply don't use it and are against it, using AI for generating content. They have their reasons. That's fine. The second are those that are using it because they have experienced the value that it can create, but are hiding their use of it because of the stigmas that have developed around it. So they'll do things like, hide the M dashes in their writing or hide the watermarks in generated images. The third are those that are using it and are completely transparent about their use of it, what they used, how they used it, how they validated it, etc. So VDCO Tech and VDCO Data are solidly in that third camp. We are making it part of our company culture, our DNA, to embrace it where it can show demonstrated value, but we do it with clarity, we do it with proper caution, and we do it with transparency to all of those who may consume what we generate. So in the interest of that, I tell you that today that we use AI to generate every video in this deck and almost every slide in this deck. So that's why you see the Notebook LM logo in the corner. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But all of the source material for the presentation and the final review was solely the responsibility of Cindy and myself. Something that we've seen recently, Autodesk recently introduced the concept of AI transparency cards for its AI-enabled products. And so we're stealing that idea right up front here in our disclaimer to be upfront about how we used about AI to talk about AI. All right, so there's my disclaimer. Let's move on.
Don't you love our jobs? Getting to do cool client site visits like this?
Are you sure we're supposed to be out here?
No, probably not. Let's get moving.
All right, so a little bit of fun with an AI generated video. That's not the last one you'll see today. We know,
hey, Scott,
yep.
I think something gray has come up on your screen a little bit. Just make sure that it's showing your full slide.
Yeah, where?
Lower right-hand corner, Scott.
By the Notebook LM.
So I don't see anything on my...
We're blaming this on AI completely, just for the record, that we're talking about it in our computer.
Should I try to stop sharing and reshare real quick, or?
Sure.
I don't see anything on my screen. All right.
There you go. Let's do it again.
Reshare. Boom, boom.
It's like a pop-up screen had come in.
Oh, there you go.
Clean. Autodesk heard us say steal, and then it got really, really mad and put that little gray thing up there. We repurposed. We did not steal, for the record. Go ahead, Scott.
All right, continuing on. We know we're preaching to the choir based on the audience of this webinar, but it's clear that our industry is paralyzed by data chaos, particularly when viewing information flow from the perspective of the facility or system owner. So organizations have upwards of 13 or more disconnected systems that all author or use asset-related information in some way. This includes your BIM models that hopefully provide you with what's in the box, your GIS systems that tell you where your boxes are, your ERP system that tells you how much everything in the box costs, your BMS that monitors the current conditions of the things in the box, and your EAM CMMS that allows you to track what's happening inside that box, as well as many other information systems. So the lack of process and data interoperability across these systems causes designers, builders, and owners alike to waste significant amounts of money. So synthesized research from McKinsey and the ARC advisory group stipulate that up to 30% of O&M and CapEx spend directly ties back to bad, late, or lost data. When we don't have connected information, really smart people make really dumb decisions. Cindy, I think I may have heard once or twice that you have a metaphor that ties this challenge to drowning ducks. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I do. I do. Drowning ducks is really, 15 years ago, let's start there. BIM Forum, James HOK, The Legends of BIM Forum. I'm a BIM Forum groupie from way back. They basically said if someone was saying repeatedly the BIM model, the building information model, that a cute fluffy kitten would die. They were killing kittens way back then. So a lot of us old timers, BIM groupies, as I mentioned, remember it. It was kind of a rite of passage back then. If you misused terminology, someone would ultimately call you out. And it was another way of kind of being able to show who you were and that you understood digital practice by kind of being with the insiders, the cool kids in the crowd. So last year I stood up on stage at the Building Smart USA BIM Smart Summit. We hold that in Broward County every year. And I moved on from killing kittens to actually drowning ducks. And I said the problem isn't the technology and using the vocabulary anymore. It's the disconnection in that. And that's happening really because our data strategies and our BIM processes are ultimately failing. So when you look at why those are failing, and on the next slide, I kind of start to call that out, where that drowning ducks, that killing the kittens was just about misusing a term, the BIM model. Drowning ducks is about misusing an entire system. To me, it's bigger, it's scarier, it's more costly, it's more expensive. That's where the risk is. And the way that we're doing that is in our data silos. It's ignoring our handover, the file naming, the templates, not having templates, even if we're neglecting them. We're definitely not training people and keeping our training up to date. And whether it's a BIM execution plan, it's a project plan, it's messy. And we're drowning in the amount of work that we have in all the information. And the problem with AI is AI amplifies whatever environment you're in. So if you were killing kittens or now drowning ducks, it's going to continue to do that. If your environment is messy, if it's inconsistent, if it's proprietary, it's unstructured, it's all over the place, it's siloed, AI is going to actually amplify that mess. But if your environment is open, it's standardized, it's structured, it's inoperable, that's when you can get your ducks in that row. So AI to us is an engine, open standards, and would then be the fuel, I would say on that. So we want to make sure that our ducks are in a row, that we are sharing context, we are connecting our workflows, and that we have an intentional data design strategy that we're ultimately implementing. Because if your ducks are drowning, your AI is going to drown just as well. And ultimately, you want it to be your teammate.
Another video here for you.
Scott, do you think maybe I've taken the drowning ducklings metaphor a little too far?
Oh no, animating us as ducks is a totally normal way to make a point.
All right. Okay. Yada, yada, yada. Our industry has a data problem. We know that. Why are we talking about AI today? We're talking about it because similar to the advent of tools like CAD, then enterprise applications, BIM, then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, AI represents a paradigm shifting technology that can be a powerful tool in addressing the data chaos problem. However, similar to those other leaps in technology, to fully leverage the value, there needs to be a mental paradigm shift related to what this technology does to our organizations, our people, our processes, our systems, and of course, our data. We've seen firsthand individuals, including ourselves, we'll share some of our stories today, struggle with the hype surrounding AI, the misinformation about AI capabilities and how they're actually achieved, and the binary thinking that it's all or nothing related to AI. Whether you're talking about a chat agent on one end or autonomy, full autonomy at the other end, as well as a fear that AI is coming for all of our jobs. So we wanted to take a moment to share our experience and share our learned first principles in adopting AI in our project teams and organizations. So the first of which is the concept of everyday AI versus game-changing AI. And the frame I want to give you related to this is that everyday AI are the tools, solutions, capabilities that individuals can use to automate tedious tasks they get stuck doing every day, to focus more time on the high value, high judgment work they're critical to performing. Whereas game-changing AI are the large scale enterprise investment level that bring AI into the secret sauce of the organization, the services and processes that differentiate your company from your competitors or your colleagues. So improving in both areas should be the goal of every organization, but it's important to note their differences and how improving everyday AI can actually help deliver game-changing AI, and also how everyday AI can start providing significant value on a shorter timeline with less risk than game-changing AI. Ultimately, we're saying do both, but especially don't sleep on everyday AI. The next first principle that I want you to consider is the concept of context. Now, I have an entire presentation, actually multiple presentations on the topic of context in AI, but here's a crash course on what it is and why it's important. When you compare a human to an AI model, the AI model has incredible book knowledge and incredible production capacity to do work, far, far exceeding the book knowledge and production capacity of a human. But humans have something AI doesn't have. We have context. We live in the real world and can understand all of the variables that go into producing a particular unit of work. This includes experience, the tools that will be useful, the required formats, the urgency of the task, and on and on and on. So the model, as it relates to your task, has none of that. And so it should come as no surprise that if you want to get successful results from a model, you need to provide the relevant context. That is your entire role in the working relationship with AI. You are the chief context officer. So think of an AI model as the ridiculously smart intern that has never had a real job before. You wouldn't set them to work without providing some level of guidance. You shouldn't do that with AI either. The next first principle we want to cover, and we've started to term this the mech suit analogy. We firmly believe, and we think this hugely impacts our ability to get real value out of and real change out of AI in our organization. It's that your primary goal when working with AI should not be to have your good employees touch the work less or eliminate them. On the contrary, your goal should be to have your good employees touch the meaningful work more. You do this by eliminating the tedious, heavy lifting, high friction, time consuming tasks at the direction and under the oversight of the human. By doing so, you significantly increase the scale of impact of your employees by decreasing the noise of the tasks they are not needed for. When looking at how to integrate AI into your organization, it's important that you have this mindset and focus on how the solution will help your employees, not diminish them. This has the added benefit of helping to quell the fears about jobs being replaced by AI. The employee becomes an active participant in the improvement efforts and not a roadblock that needs to be removed.
Well, and Scott, I think it's important to say that with AI, we just didn't give AI to everyone, but we also don't have AI on lockdown. And because AI, as I said, it will amplify mess. Not everybody needs to be amplified on certain skill sets. So you need to identify what skill sets that they either need. Do they need a chat to help them do the QA/QC? But that can really, you need to manage the risk with AI and make sure that the people that you are making more efficient are the people that are ultimately going to set the process and the AI tools up so that then everyone can ultimately use, and then you can see where that breaks. But I think that's really, really important. Scott initially developed an AI brain for me, and I'm embarrassed to say, but I will say, I didn't know how to use my own brain. I don't know how to use my real brain, and I didn't know how to use my AI brain because I didn't develop it off of a problem that existed for anyone else in my organization. So it was a total swing and miss. That AI brain we are going to repurpose And that's really kind of moves on to the next slide. I think that Scott's going to get ready to talk to you about of what level and why we needed it when we started using AI for our entire workforce.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for the anecdote, Cindy, because that's the perfect segue into this next concept. So, another critically important concept for integrating AI within your organization is to understand that AI is not a binary decision, as I think a lot of the marketing around AI seems to suggest. We hear about ChatGPT and we hear about agentic AI. Polar opposites as it relates to what is truly a spectrum of AI autonomy solutions. So, an AI enthusiast that I follow, Nate B. Jones, presented the concept of the 6 levels of AI autonomy, and it really resonated with me and what I had personally experienced trying to inject AI into my daily work, into Cindy's daily work, and into the work of our project teams. Nate provided clarity that I needed that allowed me to get back in the business of being a good business analyst or consultant. And that is to right size the solution to the problem. Again, I've got full presentations on this, but here are the cliff notes related to the framework. So at level 1, you have the advisor or chat agent. This is things like ChatGPT, when you just go to the website and use it. You ask the AI for advice for something and it throws an answer or product back at you. This can be incredibly useful for things like research, brainstorming, drafting emails, etc. It does feel a need and it's incredibly low investment. Level 2 is what we call Copilot. And so Microsoft Copilot is actually aptly named. It's a pretty good example of a Copilot. It happens to be a pretty good example of this. But really, any software you use that has that magic AI button somewhere on the interface probably falls into this category. This is where AI actively suggests completions for you, or it provides shortcuts to an end while you're working within a particular application or in a particular context, like inside of a document, inside of a web form, or in a spreadsheet. Again, this can provide significant time savings value, with some studies showing it can improve personal productivity by up to 40 to 50% by having simple automations for highly repetitive and exceedingly simple tasks. Now, level 3 is where things I think get really exciting. This is a tool augmented assistant. And an example of this would be tools like Claude Code or ChatGPT's agent mode. This is where you're working with an AI in a context where it has access to external tools. And it can complete multi-step tasks, or it can produce high quality deliverables in native application file formats that you need. And it can do this on its own. We're going to come back to talking a little bit about level 3 in a minute, as I think it's the most underrated level in this framework that too many people aren't exploring as viable ways to empower their employees. Level 4, we call it a structured workflow. This is where we've now introduced some level of an orchestration tool or layer. This could be a tool like N8N or LangChain or custom or any number of things that are out there. But these orchestration layers get introduced to string multiple tool augmented assistants together into a sequential process with humans in the loop along the way at critical points. So we've now just crossed into the threshold of where department, if not enterprise level investment and coordination kind of becomes necessary. Everything below this is more focused on the tasks of an individual person or an individual role. But at the structured workflow, we start to piece those together into larger structures. At level 5, we call this semi-autonomous. So here the AI handles all the routine and standard cases autonomously. However, there's checks in place for exceptions, escalations, and there's complex edge cases, which are shunted to a human to be able to deal with. And then finally, level 6 is fully autonomous. So think of self-driving cars, right? The AI does everything from start to finish, including exception handling with no human interventions. Now, you can imagine how well your context needs to be understood and how clear your requirements need to be defined in order to accomplish this with any level of acceptable risk. So, as you lay out this framework like this, one of the things I want to point out before I move on is at the bottom level, this can also be seen kind of like an evolution in maturity, right? And almost like an implementation plan for individual tasks. At the very bottom, you have very little context to find and you're just trying to get answers. At the next level, you've added a little bit of context to be able to repeat repetitive tasks in the same way and get a similar result. And then with the tool augmented assistant, you're just improving the capability of that co-pilot to actually be able to produce final deliverables on those tasks or execute multiple steps. So it's a lot about just personal augmentation and improvement, where when you start to cross that threshold to the upper levels, we're now starting to piece those together, just like we would piece individuals in an organization together to deliver a process. That's what we're starting to do at levels 4 and above. And I think that's important because it speaks to two different levels of investment from an organization. So, I think we've heard about, organizations struggling with trying to figure out how much they should invest in this agentic AI and semi-autonomous or fully autonomous capabilities. And they should be looking at that and they should be strategizing for that. But what I think is lost a lot of the time is the amount of value and the amount of organizational enablement that can come from helping your employees navigate the first 3 levels of this framework. That's not only going to improve their capabilities and deliver real value on a short timeline, but it's also going to be what allows you to then move into levels 4, 5, and 6 and have some level of confidence that you can be successful. So now I mentioned something really compelling happens at level 3, and I've experienced this personally. I've used tools like Claude Code to develop simple web applications for routine tasks all on my own. I've actually just developed applications for personal things that I need to do, not even work related things. I've also used them to orchestrate the creation of large, complex reports, which are ultimately Word documents, but have a ton of independent components with data coming from different sources and a need to keep it all aligned and deliver a consistent message. So I've used Claude Code to do that inside a workspace on my desktop. I've also used it to clean up raw data from evaluation. So just project data, product data submittals and that sort of thing that just get dumped on us, to be able to sift through that, extract the meaningful data, and make sense out of it. And then, of course, I've used it to generate presentations, as we'll talk about in a minute, but like the one you're seeing right now, and a number of other use cases. And so I can attest to the amount of time savings in many cases that can significantly exceed 50% once you've dialed it in. But that's not all. Because we're looking at the task and role level, we can leverage existing models and tool sets, and there's always a human in control. So these solutions can be 10 to 1,000 times easier to implement than a fully agentic system. Why is that? It's the expense in the last 5% of a fully autonomous use case, addressing the edge cases, addressing the exceptions in every single scenario that you might encounter. This can be incredibly expensive to understand, to design, and to implement. And it's why we aren't all traveling in self-driving cars every day right now already, right? So just think for a second what it would take to create a fully autonomous construction site. The challenge seems almost immense, or it sounds immense, almost impossible, even with the capabilities that we've seen with AI. And so the main message here is, when you think of AI, make sure to consider the entire spectrum of solutions and understand that it's not an all or nothing thing. You don't have to go for full autonomy. There are ways to implement use case-based solutions, tool augmented assistance, that can greatly increase the productivity of individual roles within your organization at a much, much lower level of investment. And
I would just add that then makes everyday AI a true game changer. So to us, building my big brain, and I didn't know what to put in it, and I struggled, and then I created it, and it was easy for Scott to do. It was quick and pretty simple. We thought that was a game changer, but really my strength as a non-technical lead is really, I know the right people to bring to the table. So my brain by itself didn't serve a lot of good. So I needed an everyday AI use case. And that's where I saw game changing efficiency and productivity within my own workflow and with how I work together with my teams. So
Yeah, and
don't
another
discredit everyday AI.
Yeah, and another thing, related to that same anecdote and lesson is one of the things we learned is when we built that, we didn't really know what to put in it. We kind of just put everything in it. And so one of the big lessons learned was, okay, we probably need to get a little bit more deliberate about what we capture from our conversations, our meetings, our documents, et cetera, and where we put it, how we organize it, because doing so can have a huge impact in how we're able to use it down the road. And so taking a little bit of time to get deliberate about the outcome we were trying to achieve, trace that back to the input that's required to do that, and then focus on getting that part right. And we're seeing, huge improvement in the value we're getting once we kind of made that change on the brain. So if you take nothing else away from me today, think about how you might be able to start introducing level 3 type solutions in your everyday personal life or in your work life or at your project team level. Right? These are things you can do that don't necessarily have to be, depending on the guidelines in your company, necessarily be an enterprise-backed, invested level of effort. If you set this as your target for most of your role-based tasks, your tedious tasks, you can see significant value with relatively small investment and relatively low risk. So some examples of what a tool augmented assistant might be are shown here. It could be something that easily searches messy project data for you and gets you, logical, reasonable answers. It could be something that on the fly during a meeting or immediately after a meeting can run calculations based on data that was captured. Or it could be building high quality data records. So, building out your asset inventory as you go through a capital project as work progresses through that project. So it's looking for these, tedious, high friction, repeatable areas where you might be able to offload some of that effort to AI.
We recently implemented AI to help us improve our processes.
Oh, really?
Yes. It told us you are the bottleneck. You are being redesignated to reindeer stall cleanup duty.
All right. Cindy, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, I'm not designating you anywhere near reindeer duty, just for the record.
I appreciate that. I already cleaned up my dogs.
Just for it's recorded, it's on record. Defining use cases, I've used myself as the example with my AI brain, right? And I named it my CWB brain, and I was all super, super excited about it. But I didn't define my use case, truly, I didn't. And then AI, my brain was solving either the wrong problems or it wasn't solving any problem at all. Because to be honest, there was no problem with my current brain and how I answered my team and my colleagues, and I didn't even know how to train it. So you need to start with clear use cases, and that ultimately is going to force the alignment, the outcome, what data you need to require it, what problem you're trying to solve, and that's where you're going to see your value. It also dramatically reduces your waste and your inefficiency. Now, granted, Scott, I am a non-technical person. I say that. I went to, I studied Berkeley, University of Texas with the AI programs and initiatives. Started 4 years ago, really going down this AI path. I, as a BIM blonde kind of person, not technical, working in Revit, I can actually get on and write some Python code and start to do that. But Scott's the true data scientist and the computer scientist, so he could create things so much faster than I could in doing my search tools. But that wasted effort was quick for us. But without having those two people tied in together, that could be a huge financial cost to you. And now you need to manage your AI risk. Your use cases manage your AI risk. And there's lots of different use cases. We're going to get into a couple of them here, but the use cases can be everything from generative and parametric design, performance modeling, clash and code compliance reviews, layout optimization. What you're seeing here is, what we're doing in design from in the field, ultimately to maybe document and data process management that we're using for owners. So Scott, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll get into a little bit more of examples of what you're doing. The AI use case here of an AI auditor, an agent that can help us. The problem, Kobe data is all over the place. It's hard to check. People don't know what they're doing and how to necessarily put it together. We're on both sides of that fence. We'll work with architects and engineers to give them a Kobe compliant export. And then we work with owners where we're making sure that those Kobe compliance deliverables meet their standard and are compliant. So we wanted to create an agent. I did not want to necessarily buy something off the shelf. I didn't know if it was there. And those language models change so frequently and so often that I was afraid I was going to buy something that then was going to be outdated. So we defined what that problem was, what the solution ultimately needed to be. And then we created and we work with companies to help them create AI auditors for data cleanup, if nothing more. The next one that we have, and that I'll showcase on the next slide, is really something that started my AI journey 4 years ago. So I've been doing BIM VDC for over 20 years, 30 years actually in industry, 20 years jumping on that BIM bandwagon. And when I jumped on the AI bandwagon, it was watching George Franco, who I think is just an AI industry leader. I watched George present the AI brains that he had created at Moss Construction at the time he was there. He's now with Alberici. And he was using computer vision and he was creating brains that were trained on OSHA standards and different codes so that they could go out and they could take pictures and then they could instantly kind of say, here's a safety risk. This doesn't follow our Moss standard. This does not follow, OSHA guidelines. And here's a warning. So their superintendents could get a checklist and then go out in the field and check. And he created all different kinds of brains that were able to do QA, QC on processes within their company and organization. Now you have tools like LeapThought, you have Reconstruct, their inspector app, that they've done that as well, and that are commercial viable off-the-shelf solutions. So these are AI tools and trends and use cases that we see hitting the market today. The next one that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I'm going to have Scott go into more detail, is really when you define the use case that's specific to HVAC and work orders, and now you're starting to tie in what happens to the service you provide, whether it's architecture, engineering, to owners, and kind of where that life cycle is. So Scott, if you want to jump in on this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this one that's near and dear to my heart in asset management. I mean, there's not a client that I work with right now who isn't attempting to accomplish something like this. Now, it may not all be HVAC, but initiatives at every airport I talk to implement better usage of IoT and predictive maintenance and more proactive backlog, work order backlog management. And so here's an example of what one of those could look like, where you've got an AI enabled agent that takes structured inputs in the form of IoT sensor data. So, pressure, temperature, things that are happening right now. It pairs that with CMMS record history. So that might be a history of failure codes on specific dates and the causes for those failures. And it marries that data together. It might also bring in, BIM detail related to what is serving what area of the facility, or what's connected to what, or what operations might be happening in that particular area of the facility. And it synthesizes all of this data to analyze the investment and risk. And what this does is it creates a more intelligent work backlog. We're able to prioritize that work backlog that optimizes our maintenance response. And the bottom line is that you can be much more confident that what you're working on is the right thing to do at the right particular time. And that's critical in asset management, particularly when you have limited resources, which, let's face it, everyone we talk to says they have limited resources. So this is a wonderful example, and it can apply across all sorts of asset types, where a targeted, implementation of AI with the right data sets coming in can have an immense impact on day-to-day operations and ultimately the total cost of ownership of
I'm going to interrupt you, Scott, because you said
Sure.
unlimited resources. And, I don't know if AECOM has limited resources, considering it was just announced today. I read it in the magazine. I had heard it through industry gossip, let's say. But AEC magazine released it today that AECOM purchased an AI startup for over $390 million. And I had two reactions to that. The first one is, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. They're calling it the autonomous engineer. And so, they're going all in. What does that mean for little old me? We're a small company and everyone else. And I thought, well, wait, the stuff that they just bought as a technology provider is actually stuff that we are doing today. So when you enable your workforce and people with AI and AI tool sets, you are still competitive in that market, and you do not have to. I did not invest 390 million with VDCO Data and Scott. I can tell you that.
Wait a minute. I thought that's what we agreed on. That's
I
not
did
what
not. I did not sign
okay.
that on
Must
the
have missed
dotted
the
line.
comment.
But you're worth it, my friend. But we can do it. You can do it, and you can, if you identify those use cases, I think is the point, and you identify where the problem is. You can do it, and you don't have to invest that kind of money. But I think it's very telling to see where our industry is heading. When you have firms, I don't think that makes AECOM a tech provider or solutions provider. I think they're going to incorporate that into their service line. And that's exactly where the rest of the industry is today. So where they are today and the amount of money that they paid is really irrelevant. They're doing just what we're trying to do. It's to implement AI into an established workflow and process for the better and where really I think our industry is heading. So just wanted to throw that in when you said
Yeah,
unlimited
absolutely.
budgets.
That's great. That's great. Current news related to all of this. Finally, the final use case we'll present here, real use case, is I want to talk about. This is how we created this presentation. So I kind of, said that up front when we did the disclaimers at the beginning, that we actually utilized an AI tool to create all of the videos in this presentation and most of the actual slides. We used a tool called Notebook LM. I'm assuming many of you may have tried it, some of you maybe not. But we didn't simply, it's a great tool, by the way, definitely check it out if you haven't. It's a Google tool. But we didn't simply just tell it, hey, build us a presentation on the effects of AI and digital transformation on the AI industry. I think when we hear the term AI slop all over the place, it ties back to that type of lazy usage of AI, where an underformed prompt, I need to quickly put together material related to a problem area or an industry or something, just give me whatever you got. And of course, you get whatever it gives you. But what we did using Notebook LM is we actually created a workflow that allowed ourselves to use our own content and save a tremendous amount of time over what it would have taken traditionally. And so how we did this is we compiled a set of curated and appropriate source material. So this is mostly our own previous presentations. Cindy and I have presented together on topics like this or similar topics in the past. I've done presentations related to a lot of what we talked about here today. Cindy has as well. So we collected all that material that we had already generated, and we uploaded it into Notebook LM. And so essentially we're creating our own little context bubble just around that particular content that the Google Gemini model can then work with to address the things that we need to do. So we then use the chat feature in Notebook LM to prompt for specific messaging related to our webinar brief, our intent, what we wanted to cover today. And what this ultimately did is it allowed Google Gemini to create what would be considered net new materials, new ways of saying some of these concepts, but it's synthesized from our own sources, not from external sources. And so it also greatly reduces the issue of hallucination because we've really tightly controlled the context that is in there. And so it synthesized our own sources, but it painted it in a very specific light, which was the message that we are trying to tell today. So the next step in our process was to then use notebook LMs. And there are some super cool features in this tool if you haven't played with it. One of them is the presentation feature, where then the notebook LM can take whichever specific sources you select, as well as any additional guidance you want to give it in a prompt, and it'll create an entire presentation. One shot, an entire presentation from that prompt and those materials that you choose to include. And it produces the quality of infographics that you've seen in this slide deck here. So it generated all of these infographics into that slide deck. But I think an important thing to keep in mind, again, going back to the intentional and organized use of AI versus, what typically produces AI slop, is we didn't do this in one shot. We iterated on those created decks. So, we might take some of the slides and pull them back into the context window, back into the notebook, and ask for a slightly different take or a slightly different flavor on it. Or we might even just take the same content and same prompt and just have it run it again. It's a probabilistic model, so we're going to get a different output. And so what we ended up with was at least 5 full decks of material to deliver this material, all generated, each one in a matter of minutes, right? But what that gave us the ability to do is we could then go back into each of those presentations and cherry pick the best slides that we wanted to use. And it gave us the ability to then the cherry pick slides we could assemble into the sequence that we wanted to tell the story that we were trying to tell, the story that Cindy and I wanted to author. And that's the deck that you see here. So, we casually talked about how we would normally do this process and the meetings we would need and sharing data and rehearsing. And we figured, through that analysis that we easily saved over 50% in time related to how we would have traditionally put together this presentation between the two of us. But I think what is super important, I accidentally jiggled my email. What's really important is, as we did this, we were confined to our own material. We were in control the entire time, and we maintained the sole responsibility for quality checks along the way and at the end before what you see in front of you. And so this is why we have no problem saying with pride that this presentation was AI generated.
It's what enables us to still be able to volunteer. Right. So we're not paid as volunteers. And I believe in Building Smart's mission. I believe Scott's my data chair at the airport work group. We give our time back. But if I had to take 20 hours to put this together versus the 8 that we can do more volunteer work and get the message out there to hopefully help others in the industry. So I think that's very important when you're looking at.
That's a great point. I mean, you have to take the entire picture in. You have to take both the value as well as the transparency. I think that's an important part, right? We can say with pride that this was AI generated, but we're being completely transparent about that. And I think it's the results combined with the transparency that should speak for itself. At least that's what our philosophy is.
It is. And I mean, truly, this morning I woke up, I was all nervous because I'm like, oh my God, I didn't put the effort in that I always put in. And I outwork people. I'm not smarter than people. I usually outwork people. I really look at it so all around 152 times. My brain just doesn't stop. And I didn't feel like I did that today. So I woke up nervous. And then I was like, but wait a minute. What do we need to do? And it was funny because I used AI to make sure that I was still following all the prompts. And Scott had used AI a different way to create a podcast. And at 7:30, we're texting each other, being like, hey, I did this. Maybe this will help you. And I learned so much. So, in a 4-year journey, by using Notebook LM and doing the presentation the way that we did, it did save us a ton of time. And I actually learned a lot from it. So, how to make a podcast out of my notes, how to do those things. Scott and I spoke at DBIA, I think 2 years ago on AI. And one of the things that we said there was how many people are talking to their ChatGPT. And we had a line out the door. And I actually got 2 clients out of that saying, are you talking to your ChatGPT? And so that message, when you see AECOM making these huge moves in the industry, don't be discouraged, because you can make those same moves by implementing some of these little tips and tricks that we're willing to share with you, and we think more people should be. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you can tell, we are passionate about this, and I'm not trying to plug Notebook LM specifically, but there's a super unique feature that it has if you haven't seen it before, where, I've talked about how you can organize all your content into a project and it focuses just on that content. Well, one of the things you can do is have it generate a podcast. It literally generates a podcast with two hosts that are talking about the content that you provided. It's a phenomenal. So the way I used it this morning, as Cindy mentioned, was, hey, I'm just curious how someone else would present this same material, or how the material translates on its own, regardless of the spin that I put on it. And so to hear two just completely AI generated podcast hosts talking about this, right, and seeing what they focused on, what they emphasized, the things that they synthesized across the story, was really eye-opening to me, and was almost kind of like a coaching session for me to understand where I should focus on certain things, or maybe where I definitely want to do it different than they did. But very cool feature. If you get sent articles all the time that you just never find the time to read, Notebook LM is awesome, because you can just upload it, create a podcast for it, and then take it on the go. Listen to it while you drive, or
Listen
while
to it in
you
your car,
jog, or while you walk, whatever it may be. So,
and this is the value of Building Smart USA's Airport Work Group and our team that we kind of put together here, because we have industry thought leaders where we're sharing this kind of information, I think, in these tips and tricks as we all work to kind of work and use open standards, whether it's in our BIM models today and how we're working in IFC and the challenges we have in our models, to utilizing AI now and autonomous workflows. These are places that we share information, and we're able to learn tips and tricks and move things forward. So that's how we did our webinar. So we hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. Final thoughts. The most important takeaways here from my perspective, and I'll certainly give Cindy a chance to chime in as well, is yes, our industry continues to struggle with data chaos. And yes, there is a lot of promise and hype around this new technology called AI, not unlike the hype that we had around BIM, right? When it was first introduced. And just like the introduction of BIM, yes, it's a better mousetrap, but we need to adapt our people and organizations and processes to fully leverage it, or the chaos will continue. And actually, as Cindy so rightfully pointed out, the chaos will actually accelerate. Mm-hmm. things will get worse, not better. And some key first principles in working with AI that I want to leave you with, that hopefully we covered adequately here today, or at least introduced you to, is the value of everyday AI in enabling game-changing AI. And making an investment in your people to encourage them to have responsible and smart use of AI, but encourage them to use it so that they'll be in a position to help you enable game-changing AI. The second one is that the concept that your entire job with AI is context management. You're not going to outthink the AI from book knowledge. You're not going to outproduce the AI, but what the AI doesn't have, you have in spades. You have knowledge of what needs to get done and how it needs to get done, and all the pitfalls of doing it the wrong way, and all of that context that is required to create a high quality output. And so your job becomes context management. And that 6-level framework I talk about, literally all that is doing is just increasing the amount of stored and reusable, repeatable context at each level. You're just increasing the amount of stored, managed, and repeatable context at each one of those levels. That's at its simplest concept. That's what it is. The third concept is the metaphor of the mech suit. So the idea that, and I firmly believe this, I think this is so important to a company's relationship with AI and making it a positive one with their employees as well. AI should enable your employees to have greater impact and touch the important work more, not less. We want the good employees more involved, not less involved. And then the final one, you can apply the 6 levels of AI autonomy, the framework, to look for low friction entry points to unlocking value in your everyday work, in your project workflows, and in your cross department workflows. Cindy, is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, I would just say that, use cases, when you ask people for a use case, they're like, I don't know a use case. I don't know what it could do. And that's exactly what I said to Scott when he asked me for use cases. And then I came back and I'm like, but I have a whole bunch of problems. And that was a 4 year ago journey. And we've been slowly starting to tackle where those problems are. And the industry has evolved so quickly that the technology's there. It kind of always has been, whether it's been BIM or AI. So if you are saying it's the people, you just don't have the right ones, or maybe you have rules within your organization that aren't allowing you to use them. So the industry is changing very, very quickly.
All right. One final video for you.
Oh, we worked on a project here, the Superdome.
Hey, what are you two doing out there?
Not again.
Cindy, you said we could be out here.
Run!
All right. So a final invite. So the final thing we'll leave you with is an invite. So all the videos we produced, we used a tool called Sora 2. The model is Sora 2. There's an application called Sora, which is an OpenAI application. It's actually a social network. And what it gives you the ability to do is you can upload your own likeness and record your own voice, and then you can share it either publicly or with specific friends or networks. And then you can cast yourself and you can cast the people you're connected to in videos. You can provide prompts to generate the video of all different styles, and you can cast specific individuals in it. That's what we use to create these videos. We are very open and transparent, as we've said all along. So what you see on the screen are our Sora handles. We invite you to join Sora and use our cameos in your videos. What will you have us do? Right. And it's something that, maybe we can laugh about at the next Building Smart conference we all get together at.
Absolutely. It's where you're going to find like-minded friends. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We left some time for questions. If anybody has any, we're happy to try to answer them.